Now, I had mentioned earlier with our discussion of the normal function of the body and the levels of organization, where we said we're going to take atoms and molecules and make cells, and we're going to take cells and we're going to make tissues, and so on and so on and so on. Well, one of the conditions that we've been discussing is that condition of homeostasis, where all of those things work perfectly. Now, do keep in mind, they're always in flux. Just like, okay, depending on the time of year, okay, the way your thermostat is set in your home, you may be trying to heat your home because it's winter, okay, depending on where you live, obviously. You may be trying to cool your home because it's summer, but it's constantly in flux. Okay, temperature goes up, air conditioner turns on, brings it down. Temperature goes down, furnace turns on, heat turns on, and we end up going up. So it's constantly being assessed, constantly being evaluated. Well, when we get a condition where we disrupt that normal homeostasis, and if we really think about it, disease affects us at the cellular level. So specific diseases affect certain cells. And when we get enough cells that are affected by that disease or condition, we now have symptoms. That's the relationship. Because we have times when our cells aren't working very well for us, but there's not enough of them affected. In other words, why does someone have with a given disease so many more symptoms than another person? Why is someone more affected by that? Well, there's a whole lot of things that come into play. But just keep in mind that we can be exposed to a disease, and that disease can affect some of our cells. But if it doesn't affect enough of them, and if our immune system takes care of it, then we don't get the signs and symptoms. We didn't even know we had it. There are people who the evidence of the disease is there. In other words, hey, at some point in time, you had this virus called CMV, cytomegalovirus. And in larger populations, typically about 80% of the population has shown that they've had that disease. And people go, I don't remember that one. Well, of course you don't remember that one, because you didn't get sick enough to go to the doctor and get diagnosed. And being a virus, we really don't worry about diagnosing those because, yeah, they're self-limiting infections. They're going to go away. One way or another, they're going to go away. So we have to just keep in mind that when we affect normal homeostasis, yeah, those are our diseases. So that's where we're going to take a decent amount of time and cover those as we disrupt that. And so to kind of compare and contrast a couple of terms, the relationship of signs and symptoms, because we hear about that all the time. What are the signs and what are the symptoms of the disease? To put that in context of what we're referring to there is the signs of the disease are those that we can see when we look at the patient. So we can see there is abnormal swelling, redness. There's a particular type of pattern of rash. We see what we call purulent exudate or pus. Okay, it's swelling where there's a whole lot of white cells that are busy doing their thing. Okay, you look at something simple as a zit on your face. Okay, and you give it, is there redness? Yes. Is there swelling? Yes. If you push on it and you spray the mirror with this white stuff, well, that's purulent exudate. So you're showing signs of inflammation, very local inflammation. But we can also show signs of very widespread inflammation as well. Looking at the patient, watching them vomit, okay, that would be a sign as well. Now, symptoms is what we determine by asking the patient. Okay, tell me what's going on. Well, I'm struggling to breathe. Oh, I have a headache, and the headache is, on both sides of my head, or it feels like it's squeezing, okay, just above my eyes, or okay, I'm really, really tired, or anything that they can tell us. So signs, what we see, symptoms, what the patient tells us. And then we do a lot of diagnostic procedures to try and give us more information to put those pieces together. So a medical laboratory scientist, and at Weber State we have a medical laboratory science program, their job is to take various fluids and stuff, okay, from the body, biopsies and fluids and spinal fluid and synovial fluid and obviously blood and urine and whatever, and do various tests to then say, okay, this is what I see and this is what the patient's telling me. What does that mean? Our radiological procedures, where they're going to do all sorts of imaging procedures, CTs and MRIs and the 3D reconstruction technology and all of those things where, okay, given signs and symptoms, this is what I'm seeing, therefore. Okay, because we can see broken bones very often. The patient can tell us, I've got numbness in my arm, I've got blood. But then we take the x-ray and we say, yep, congratulations, okay, you've now gotten this and this type of fracture. Okay? Now, going together with that relationship we frequently use the term syndrome. Now, it might get a little overused to some degree. Where is something considered as a disease and where is something considered a syndrome? So if somebody has, for example, a kidney disease referred to as glomerulonephritis, and then someone's also diagnosed with kidney disease called nephrotic syndrome. Well, what does that mean? Well, a syndrome is when we have a collection of signs and symptoms that frequently occur together, and we refer to them as a syndrome. For example, somebody acquires the HIV infection. So the disease is caused by human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. The symptoms and signs that arise from that are referred to as AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So those are the symptoms. So someone can be HIV positive and not have AIDS, but someone can be HIV positive and have AIDS. Do they have the symptoms of that disease that are caused then by that virus? Now, the reason I say sometimes this gets overused is you figure when you go to the physician and you're going to spend your copay or you pay cash or whatever you have to do to see that physician, there's really two things you want when you come out of there. You want A, a prescription to make it better yesterday, and B, you want a name for it. You do not want to ever come out of, or we as consumers of healthcare, we don't want to ever come out of a physician's office and go home and they say, hey, what did you say? And he didn't know. Well, it doesn't go over well with us. But if you go in, let's say you're not feeling good, you're just kind of run down, you got a runny nose, you got a headache, and the physician says, you have viral syndrome. You're like, whew, okay, good. Okay. He just said you had a virus. So you go home and somebody says, well, what do you have? He says, well, I have viral syndrome. They're like, oh, is that going to be okay? Yep, says I'm going to be okay. Oh, good. Okay, well, he doesn't know what virus you have. Okay, you have an upper respiratory virus. That's why your nose is running. That's why you have a headache. Okay, it's going to go away, and he knows that. Okay, so sometimes we overuse it. Or if somebody has irritable bowel syndrome, very often what that means is that we looked for Crohn's disease, and we looked for ulcerative colitis, and we looked for gallbladder problems, and we looked for gastric ulcer problems and duodenal ulcer problems, and we looked for appendicitis, and we looked for all of those things. And we looked for celiac disease. We looked for all of those things, and we didn't find any of them. Well, nobody wants to go home and say, we don't know what you have. So you have irritable bowel syndrome. Oh, whew. Okay. So we have to be a little bit careful with this stuff. Okay. But we do frequently group signs and symptoms that occur together into various syndromes. For example, individuals, and it's very common of individuals who are type 2 diabetic, that they're classified as suffering from metabolic syndrome because they have these groups. Okay, they have hypertension, they have obesity, they have problems with abnormal levels of fats in their blood, and they have type 2 diabetes. Well, all of these are interrelated, frequently caused by number 3 down here. Okay, but all of these are interrelated, and they're grouped together as metabolic syndrome. So collections of signs and symptoms, we then classify them under that term.